Hi everyone, it's Erica Abel, author of the first Minna and the Canine Club book, and I'm so excited to start with you Minna's Book of the Month Club. This is our first month we're hosting, the month of December, and Minna has chosen one of our favorite Christmas stories of all time, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Here is the book we're going to be reading. It's a picture book version. We also have a chapter book version for more advanced readers if you're interested. It's the Puffin Classics at Barnes & Noble. But before I get started on the read aloud, I wanted to share with you some facts about Charles Dickens because he is one of the greatest writers we have ever known. Charles Dickens was born in England in the 1800s, so well over 100 years ago. He was born into a very poor family. In fact, they were so poor that at the age of 15, Charles Dickens had to quit school and work in a factory where he worked 15 hours a day just to earn enough money to pay off some of the debt his family owed. Secondly, Charles Dickens wrote tons of books, and he wrote a lot of his books based on real people he met. And we will discuss that more because something interesting about A Christmas Carol is that many of the characters in this book are based on people in real life Charles Dickens has met. And so we're going to talk about some of those characters as we read this book together. And then some facts about the actual book, A Christmas Carol. Charles Dickens wrote several books before this book, and he was a pretty famous author at the time, but the last book he wrote did not sell well at all. In fact, his publisher didn't even want to publish any more of his books because the last book he wrote didn't do well. But Charles Dickens had this passion that he wanted to share a story, and he was willing to spend his own money to publish and print copies of this book. So 3 weeks before Christmas, he wrote this book quickly. He wrote it so quick that he stayed up late at night, finished the book, and it's actually a pretty thick book. The original book is a thick chapter book, and he finished that in just 3 weeks. And he spent his own money, published it, printed it, and got it in bookstores a week before Christmas. The book was so amazing and so well done that it sold out in England by Christmas Day. And to this day, over 100 years later, we're still sitting here reading A Christmas Carol together. So that tells you what an amazing book this is. And Minna and I are really excited to share this book with you. As we read this book together, I want you to think specifically about what is the spirit of Christmas that Charles Dickens wants us to take from this book. The reason he stayed up late in the middle of the night to finish this book before Christmas, for 3 weeks before Christmas, was because he wanted his readers to learn the true spirit of Christmas and to take that spirit with them and show that all year long, not just in the month of December. So as I'm reading this book to you, I really want you to think about what is the spirit of Christmas that Charles Dickens wants us to take away. So here we go, let's read the book together, and then we'll come back next week and discuss some important questions. Enjoy! A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Marley was dead. There was no doubt whatever that old Marley was dead as a doornail. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge was at work in his counting house when his nephew Fred came in. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle!" "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" He was a scraping old sinner, Scrooge was, hard and sharp as flint. "If I could work my will," he continued, "every idiot who goes about with a Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled and buried with a stake of holly." "Uncle," pleaded Fred, "you don't mean that. Come dine with us tomorrow." "Humbug," said Scrooge, and he waved his nephew out the door. At day's end, Scrooge's clerk, Bob Cratchit, snuffed the candle out and put on his hat to go. "You want all day off tomorrow, I suppose?" Scrooge grumbled. "Christmas, a poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December." Scrooge walked out after him with a growl. When Scrooge arrived home, however, something strange happened. As he put his key in the lock, he saw on the knocker not a knocker, but the face of his dead partner, Jacob Marley. "Humbug," said Scrooge. All at once, it was a knocker again. Quite satisfied, he closed the door and locked himself in. Scrooge had dressed for bed and settled in before the fire when he was startled by a clanking noise, as if someone was dragging a heavy chain in the cellar. Then he heard the noise much louder, on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming closer still. A figure came on through the heavy door. "Who are you?" trembled Scrooge. "Ask me who I was? Who were you then? In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." "Humbug! I tell you, humbug!" At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry. "Hear me!" bellowed the ghost. "I wear the chains of greed I forged in life. I am here to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. You will be haunted tonight by 3 spirits." I think I'd rather not," said Scrooge. "Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first when the bell tolls 1. Then the ghost floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge certainly could not sleep now. He had no choice but to wait upon the tolling of the hour. "Ding dong!" "A quarter past," said Scrooge, counting. "Ding dong!" "Half past," said Scrooge. "Ding dong!" "A quarter to it," said Scrooge. "Ding dong!" "The hour itself," said Scrooge. The bell sounded with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy one. Light flashed up in the room, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, you see, by a hand. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge. "No, your past." It clasped him gently. "Rise and walk with me." Scrooge was helpless as together they passed through the wall. Scrooge saw that they now stood upon an open country road. The city had entirely vanished. "I know this place," he gasped. "I was a boy here." A group of boys in great spirits came along the road, and Scrooge called out to them. The ghost held up a hand. "These are but the shadows of the things that have been," it said. "They cannot see or hear anything of us." The boys came on, and Scrooge knew every one. Why did his heart leap as they passed? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them shout Merry Christmas? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? What good had ever been done to him? "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. They entered a bare room, made bare still by the lines of desks. At one of these a lonely boy sat reading. Scrooge crept closer, and a weight fell upon his heart. "Could it be?" he whispered. "Yes," said the spirit. The boy was Scrooge himself, so many years before. "He has no place to go this Christmas," remembered Scrooge as a tear came to his eye. The ghost smiled thoughtfully. "Let us all see another Christmas." They were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. "Was I apprenticed here?" marveled Scrooge. They went in. At sight of an old gentleman, Scrooge cried, "Why, it's old Fezziwig, alive again!" Fezziwig called out in a rich voice, "Yo-ho there, Ebenezer!" Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in. "No more work tonight," said Fezziwig. "It's Christmas Eve." In no time, the warehouse was converted to as bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. Guests arrived, and among them a fair young girl who took the hand of the young Ebenezer Scrooge. There were dances, and there was cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast. Scrooge's heart and soul were in all of this. He remembered everything, enjoyed everything. When the cheerful voices died away, he was sad to hear them go, hers most of all among them. Scrooge hung his head, conscious of being exhausted, and further of being in his own bedroom. The ghost had vanished. Scrooge barely had time to fall into bed before he sank into a sleep as heavy as his heart. Awakening in the middle of a snore, Scrooge did not need to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of the hour. A strange voice called his name. "Know me better, man!" exclaimed the ghost. "I am the ghost of Christmas Present. You have never seen the like of me before." "Never," Scrooge made answer. "Touch my robe." Scrooge did as he was told and held it fast. They stood in the city streets on Christmas morning. The people who were shoveling away on the housetops were full of glee, calling out to one another and exchanging snowballs. The ghost led Scrooge straight to his clerk Bob Cratchit's house. There was nothing of high mark in the Cratchits' Christmas dinner. They were a poor family, and Tiny Tim could not walk without his crutch. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. Bob Cratchit said he didn't believe there was ever such a tender goose as the one his wife had cooked, and his wife trembled when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us." "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. "Spirit," said Scrooge, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see an empty seat," replied the ghost, "and a crutch without an owner." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, kind spirit. Say he will be spared." But the ghost did not respond. It was a great surprise to hear a hearty laugh at the moment. It was an even greater surprise for Scrooge to recognize it as his nephew's, and to find himself in his living room. "He said that Christmas was a humbug!" cried Scrooge's nephew. "He is a comical old fellow." "I am sure he is very rich," hinted Scrooge's niece. "What of that, my dear?" said Scrooge's nephew. "His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking, ha ha ha, that he is ever going to give us any of it." Scrooge cast his eyes upon the ground, but he raised them speedily on hearing what his nephew spoke next. "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man wherever he is. He wouldn't take it from me, but he may have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." "Uncle Scrooge!" they cried. "And a Merry Christmas to you, my darlings," Scrooge responded gratefully, forgetting that his voice made no sound in their ears. Soon they began playing games, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better at Christmas. Scrooge begged like a boy to be allowed to stay. 1 half-hour, spirit, only one. But the ghost was gone. The chimes were ringing. Scrooge remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground toward him. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. Although he was used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape, and he found that he could barely stand to follow it. "Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The city seemed to spring up around them. The spectre gestured to a knot of businessmen. "I don't know much about it," said a fat man with a monstrous chin. "I only know he's dead." "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life I don't know of anybody to go to it," said another. Scrooge did not know what to make of this conversation. It could not be about the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was the past, and this ghost province was the future. The spectre led Scrooge into a low-down shop, where a woman was untying a heavy bundle. "Bed curtains," said the shopkeeper. "You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there dead?" "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, he'd have had somebody looking after him, instead of gasping out his last there alone by himself. Ha ha ha!" Scrooge shuddered from head to foot. The scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare bed, on which beneath a ragged sheet there lay, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, the body of this man. "Let us leave this fearful place," Scrooge cried. "Spectre," said Scrooge after they had gone, "tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead." The phantom led him among the graves of a churchyard and pointed down to one. "Answer me one question first," said Scrooge. "Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of what might be only?" Still the ghost pointed, as unmovable as ever. Scrooge crept forward, trembling as he went, and read upon the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. "Am I that man who lay upon the bed?" he cried. "No, spirit, oh, no, no, I am not the man I was. I will honor Christmas in my heart, and keep it all the year. I will live in the past, present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall live within me. Oh, tell me I may wipe away the writing on this stone." Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, Scrooge saw a change in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own, the bed was his own, the room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. Scrooge opened his window. "What's today?" he called down to a boy in the street. "Why, Christmas Day," replied the boy. "I haven't missed it," said Scrooge to himself. "My fine fellow, do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up in the next street?" "What, the one as big as me?" returned the boy. "Go and buy it, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you a half a crown." The boy was off like a shot. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's," whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands, splitting with a laugh. "He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Ha ha ha." Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh. After sending off the turkey, Scrooge dressed himself all in his best and set out for his nephew Fred's house. It is a mercy his nephew didn't shake his arm off when he arrived. Scrooge felt at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful happiness. Scrooge was early at his office next morning. "Hello," he pretended to growl when Bob Cratchit arrived a few minutes late. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob. "It shall not be repeated." "I am not going to stand this sort of thing. And therefore," Scrooge said, leaping from his stool, "a Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary," he continued, with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, "and do what I can to assist your struggling family." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas as well as anyone alive. May that be truly said of us all, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.